going on, everybody? Thank you for joining us tonight. Tonight, we have a very special guest with us today. This is a man of many hats. In 2006, he created an independent comic book publishing company called Alterna Comics. He has a New York Times bestselling anthology in 2012. He even had a graphic novel adapted into a film known as The Chair with the one and only Rowdy Roddy Piper. He enjoys the paranormal and the unexplained, much of which we'll be talking about tonight. And I think there's a little bit of hint of that in some comics that we'll be talking about later on also. So please welcome Peter Samedi.
Hey, how's it going? Thanks for having me.
What's going on,
What's
dude?
going
Happy
on?
to have you.
All right. That intro. What an intro. Thank you.
You are much deserved of one. So you've also got the podcast, Comic Book Radio, and you've actually had me on there a couple times when you allow smaller indie creators to talk about their production with their comics or even music or anything else that they create. So, of course, I could only pay it forward. I mean, it is kind of a must, you know? So I am more than happy to always have you here, and I thank you for being here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it.
Yeah. But so you wanted to talk about the paranormal, the unexplained, the idea that we are not alone. And do you believe that the truth is out there?
Sure. I mean, I think we already have some of the truth if we choose to accept it. But I think there's more of it that's out there that we might never even know about.
That was ominous even in itself. But
What's your favorite cryptid?
My favorite cryptid? Man, I'm fond of the Wendigo.
Oh,
I
yeah.
like that.
Is that
Yeah.
kind of where the Bigfoot came from, or was that just the Yeti?
No, those are all kind of completely different. The Wendigo is more like a spirit that takes over a human being, and
so Wendigos are more like
begin to-
skinwalkers, right?
kinda, yeah. They're closer to a skinwalker than they are to a Sasquatch kind of a thing.
Okay.
Yeah, but
I was watching the
skinwalkers are more
Y-Files.
like a dark shaman, kind of conjures these spirits and becomes this skinwalker type creature that can change and shapeshift, whereas a Wendigo can't really shapeshift. A Wendigo is sort of like you're possessed with this thing, and you crave.
So this right here would be a
flesh.
Wendigo.
This is a skinwalker.
That's a skinwalker.
Really? I typed in Wendigo and that came up.
Yeah, I think a lot of people get confused between the two, but that's a little bit more. That image, anyway, is a little bit more closely associated with a skinwalker.
Okay.
Every time I think of Wendigo, I think of that comic book character, the comic Wendigo.
Yeah, and I mean that might be even why I like it so much, is because it's really become pretty ubiquitous with pop culture.
So
Even like
Wow.
Graham Nolan with his Chenoo, that's a kind of a Wendigo. It's it's a Native American thing, and they got all different kinds of names for it depending upon the tribe and the region. But it's an interesting thing. It's creepy as hell, and there's a lot of stories about them, and that's what makes it, I think, so fascinating to me.
I
Like,
guess
some
I was
people say
watching on
Mothman
a-
or Bigfoot, but I
Well,
like Wendigo.
Mothman's cool. Bigfoot's like common. Everybody knows Bigfoot. And I guess I had heard that on that Y-Files. Bigfoot, it started off with like Yetis, and then that kind of myth trickled down into the Northern America, and then it became Bigfoot.
Yeah, Yetis are way older than what we would call Bigfoot, in terms at least of the stories that have managed to really make their way into the world. And Yeti's more of like a in Asia and Eastern Europe kind of a creature, whereas we know mostly Bigfoot to be Pacific Northwest. But there's all kinds of Bigfoot, Sasquatch all over the world. You know, you got the yowie in Australia, you got the skunk ape in the Florida region. There's
I
all
think
kinds
we've
of
got that one in Texas now.
yeah,
The
yeah.
skunk
There's all
ape?
kinds of these things.
Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not as
yeah.
big as the Sasquatch, but it's like well, I guess they call it the Texas Bigfoot, but it's like northeast Texas. It apparently came from the Florida area.
Oh yeah, yeah. There's thousands of sightings of these things, and you know, there's some concrete proof behind a lot of this stuff in terms of like giant hominid creatures and primates and all that kind of stuff. But some people dismiss it because they're like, you know, well, where is that proof right now? Where's a carcass? Where's whatever? And there's all kinds of different explanations for these things, whether they're paranormal or whether they are just some kind of evolved species of something, you know, or some people maybe think that they're like our ancestor. I think maybe we share a common ancestor, but then there's also a lot of different cases where, well, let me just say this. I think that there's all kinds of different species of these things, and there's all kinds of different explanations for these things. And some of them really, they lend more of a paranormal origin because there's all kinds of different things associated with it. There's like electromagnetic fields associated with it. There's distortion of all kinds of different energies. There's radioactivity associated with sighting these things. There's people that get radiation sickness from coming in contact with these things, kind of similar to like extraterrestrial alien abduction contact where they get radiation sickness. So there's all kinds of different stuff associated with some of these, but I don't think it's just like clear cut one answer, black and white. You know, they are definitively this. I think there are all kinds of things, and it's interesting when people try to say that there's just one explanation for this, or they dismiss it maybe completely. I think it's difficult to say that we should dismiss this stuff because there's so much of it throughout history. This isn't like a modern phenomena. I know people think it is, but this has
Well,
been
people
going
like to
on.
explain stuff away now instead of, passing on
Yeah.
the stories and the legends. Well, now we're too smart for that, so we've got to explain everything away, and that just kind of makes people a little bit less. I don't know.
Yeah.
They're a little more skeptic now, and
Well, even
Yeah.
if I were to say something too about cryptids, I would have to also say that one of my favorite former cryptids is the giant panda, because there was a time where the giant panda was considered a cryptid. There's a time where the mountain gorilla was considered a cryptid. That they couldn't prove these things. The coelacanth was considered a cryptid. You know,
So do you think most of these things that are considered mystic and basically pseudoscience just has to wait out a progression of time before it becomes actual science?
I mean, that's kind of what history shows us. You know, history
Yeah.
shows us that that's basically what occurs. And I think we're like what Peter had said. I think we're really coming across a strange time where our arrogance in terms of information at our disposal is getting the
Right.
better of us. You know, we think we know everything there is to know. And the funny part and then the sad part about that and the scary part about that is that all kinds of cultures throughout the ages warn of becoming so arrogant, because as soon as you become that arrogant, that you think you know everything, all there is to know, all powerful, you know, you can have the power of the gods, that's when bad things happen. You know, we get put in our place pretty quickly. And it seems like we are racing towards that in terms of our arrogance as far as knowing everything there is to know. Because imagine having that mindset of just, you know everything there is to know about everything. So everything you know today is all you think you'll ever need to know. You can't even live your life just as a singular human being that way, let alone as an entire race on the planet. But yet, like, we're constantly up against this, and you see authoritarian type figures at every turn that are constantly like, no, this is the truth, this is what we tell you it is, and you need to believe it. And that kind of methodology of thinking goes back for forever. We've always had these kind of systems at play.
with like the Bigfoot and all the different kinds of species or explanations for everything. It's kind of similar, and with people trying to disprove everything with the technology, that the chupacabra was always one of my favorites. And we recently there was the original story from South America where we had what country was that, where they had the alien looking thing, the goat sucker, and then it came up into Texas, and then we ended up with that weird coyote creature. I don't know if they ever actually explained what type of coyote this thing was, but you know the one I'm talking about, though. They found it, and it had been like eating animals, and apparently, I don't know if it was sucking their blood or not, but they got
I
one.
mean, well, that's the thing with all of this sort of stuff, is that even if you don't find exactly what the legend or the myth or the whatever it is exactly, I think we still find something that's a close approximation. But if we kind of just go, nope, it's just, completely dismiss it. And usually the dismissal, the answer is usually completely more ridiculous than just saying that it's a Bigfoot or it's a chupacabra or whatever. It's usually something as stupid as like, oh, let's say the chupacabra, let's say it was, oh, it's a stray dog or it's a rabid dog. Well, that doesn't really explain the things that are occurring, even if you think the sighting, you might be mistaking it for that. It's the same thing with UFOs. It's well, a UFO doesn't necessarily mean that it's extraterrestrial origin, but it still means that you don't know what the heck that is in the sky that you saw.
Right.
So
Oh, yeah.
well, what exactly is that? Because you can't prove that it's non-terrestrial, because you would have to then know that it wasn't from this earth. But if you just blanketly dismiss it and go, well, it's not that, it must be this other thing, it's like, well, how do you know it's that other thing?
Yeah.
So and no matter what, either way, it's the whole question of all of this stuff that's interesting to me is the fact that there's tons of time and money and all kinds of things that get poured into it from government organizations and all other kinds of things.
Right.
And if it's just a big nothing, then what are they doing? Because that in and of itself is then concerning.
Yeah. Why are you covering up something if it's not real or if it's just a hoax, right?
Yeah, and if it is a complete cover up, a misdirection to kind of funnel money into something else and distract or whatever, that's concerning as well.
Most definitely. Like
yeah.
which airport was it? Is it the Kansas airport where the underground is supposed to be like some kind of like demonic
Denver International Airport?
Yeah, Denver International Airport. For some reason, that airport has all kinds of like weird stuff all around it, from gargoyles popping out of cases in their statues to having, I think, some kind of skinwalker that actually like invites people into the airport and whatnot, saying, "Hey, don't forget to talk to the devil on your way out."
Oh,
and
that
stuff
thing.
like that. I'm like, why are you calling so much attention to?
That's
and
just a
making
regular
fun
day
of?
in Colorado.
Yeah, I thought that was just. I thought they just had aliens on like the fifth or fourth or fifth subdermal, whatever the lower floors under the ground. That's where
But
the
no,
humans
like,
and the
even their
work
art,
together.
even their art on the walls, it shows like New World Order type stuff where
That's what
all
gets me with
different,
that
like,
place.
children and kids are like coming together, but they're all like unified under the swastika. It's very odd that they would pick that kind of stuff out for an airport in Denver.
Yeah, plus all the money that went into that thing.
Right.
And what are
And
they?
nobody
What are they
actually
building?
knows, like, what corporation actually like funded all the money to it, because now whatever title was used to say thanks for this airport, that company is no longer around. Like, it's just some kind of like pseudo name used
It was
for
the Masons, wasn't it? Didn't they have the Mason logo all over the place?
Oh, most definitely. Yeah,
There you go.
the compass and the
Those
G
Masons.
and everything and the angle. Yeah, it's just very odd that they would have that kind of stuff. And then when it's weird how so much of it like meshes together so well, because a lot of the stuff like cryptids and whatnot, I would say that is the experimentation of the extraterrestrial that was put on this planet with us. That's where my kind of conspiracies go to. So I totally believe that there is something like the Anunnaki up there that's kind of like dropped their experiments here, and we are the you know, fruition of that labor. And so when we talk about, you know, lizard people and
Yeah,
stuff,
I
I
think
think
of
it
that.
all has
I
a
believe that.
little bit of weight to it.
I definitely agree with that. I think the Anunnaki that's a big one, man. I think there's some evidence to support it. I think there's a lot of evidence to support that.
Well, look at
Maybe
all the
even more
different,
than anything else.
when you look at all the different, you know, generations and different cultures around the world, they all believe that the San Andreas happened, you know, the big world flood. Everybody has documented that in their history when
That's the Younger
nobody,
Dryas.
yeah, the Young Andreas. Yes, thank you. Everybody's documented that. Everybody says that it happened and everything. And then you have these different little treasures that pop up after you start digging through some of the old stuff, like the Dead Sea Scrolls. They pop up, and then you have, you know, the Book of Enoch along with them and everything, and just the different types of storytelling or stories that take place throughout the different cultures. All are very similar to each other, like and at
Like
Africa with Nancy, you know, the spider god, you know, the little mischievous thing. Also over here, the Native Americans, they had their version of Anansi in rabbit form, which is where we got our idea for, you know, Joe Chandler's Uncle Remus type stuff, and then Bugs Bunny and whatnot. And it's very odd. Like, even when it came to the demigod Jing Tiu over in Japan. He is a god that took on the Holy Trinity and had his head cut off, but because his will was so powerful, he did not die, but he formed eyeballs out of his areolas and a mouth out of his belly button, and that is how he continued to live. And there are other stories like that throughout Russia and Indonesia, where it talks about certain races that didn't have heads, but they had their face on their torso. And nobody knows whether or not it's because that they just had their shoulders so up high, that's how people would mock them, or if it was actually some kind of deformation for that race. It's very crazy.
I got a question for you, Peter. The King Cryptid, that's your comic book.
Yep.
Is he based on any cryptids in particular? I love that comic book, by the way. I cannot wait for the next couple issues to come out.
Thank you. Yeah, we're finishing them up now. He's not necessarily based on like a specific cryptid. He's kind of an amalgamation of a bunch of different sort of things, but not anything 100% specific.
Particular.
Yeah, so he's obviously he was a human being, and he got cursed and turned into this form. And the form that he's in is basically like a wild man kind of Sasquatchy sort of thing. Like, it's a humanoid form, but it's because he was a human. And there's an explanation for why he has like the crown of bone that he has, along with the other things that he has. But we kind of touch upon that in issue 10, so I don't really want to give that away just yet.
Sure,
but
yeah.
you know, there's something I was thinking about when I was creating King Cryptid, and it was essentially, you know, it's what goes into any good character creation, which is you got to think about silhouette. You got to think about, you know, when you see the silhouette of that character, you pretty much know that that's that character. You know, and then on top of
I
it,
agree with that.
cryptids in general are named pretty much descriptively. Bigfoot because he's got big feet. Mothman because he looks like a moth man. So they already sound like comic book characters. So with King Cryptid, his silhouette, which is kind of like this crownish sort of thing, and he's got these wings that look like a cape, the way that they fall. If you were to see him in the woods or anything like that or whatever, very quick moment of just catching him for a little bit, that kind of thing would stick with you. Is that like, I don't know what it was. It's some kind of King Cryptid, and that's kind of how the name comes across. And that's how it's treated in the history of the character. And because of that, the character has a history of about 500 or so years. So there's different texts and stories and legends that were built upon this character. It's got different names and different dialects, Native American Indian dialect, talking about this creature in this way. And we find out a little bit again. We find a little bit more about that in issue 10. Issue 10 is a pretty pivotal issue. That's going to be on next year. That's going to be on the current campaign coming up in late October. And that issue will come out next year, but it's not going to come out this year. This year, issues 5 to 9 are coming out. So we're still building up a lot of the character and the world. And because of the fact that the character is this cryptid, this creature, this cursed immortal sort of thing, we can really play around with different time periods, and we can actually have a lot of different world building that wouldn't just be linear to the story. So we can actually have flashback issues and things like that to develop certain aspects of the world and the story.
Man, I love that. And I love that the idea you can have cameos with this different cryptids, like a reverse X-Files kind of a thing. Instead of the government, you're on the other side. On the cryptid side.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And we've got a government agency in there, or so we want them to believe, the readers. The New England Cryptid Research Organization, the acronym NECRO, and they're up to a lot of stuff. And on the surface, they look like a very innocuous organization. They're just kind of researching cryptids and taking stories and writing them down and trying to investigate these things. But there's something very sinister about this organization, and they are not at all what they appear to be, and at least publicly, even though readers, when they read the book, they know more than the public would know. Obviously, it's like a dramatic irony there. But the thing with Necro is that and I know of it because I write it, but there's various layers to it. So even what people think that they are, they're not. And I don't think people are going to be able to guess what they are exactly and what they're doing here and what they've been doing here until it's too late.
Interesting.
Yeah, that's pretty cool.
So the art style that you're using is very Silver Age.
Sort of. So the every single book, it kind of bounces around a bit. It plays up the story of the book. So if a particular issue is more horror, then I get an artist that's better with that, better with shadows and better with angles and creating tension and suspense. If the story's more action adventure, I get an artist that's more suitable for that. If the story is a little bit more, this is Kier Covington's work here, and it's colored by Christian Rossi.
The combination of colors and the line work and everything, this is right up my alley. I love this stuff.
Yeah, and it being printed on newsprint, we got to really keep that in mind too, to play up the newsprint. And this color scheme does it really well. So I'm kind of like art director as well on the book. So I'm directing the artists on, what I want it to look like and that kind of a thing. But a big part of that is just hiring the right people for the story at hand. And sometimes there's black and white issues too, because of the way that story is told. We'll get in an artist that's really good with line art. Like issue 2, issue 6, and issue 7 are black and white. And then issues 1, 3, 4, 5, 8, and 9 are in color. But again, depending on the story, we make sure that we get the right people in there to really deliver that story properly. Otherwise, if you put a great artist on a story that really isn't playing up their strengths, they don't look so great. They look pretty incompetent, when meanwhile they're very talented and they're very capable, but you got to know what kind of story to put them on. And I mean, we've seen that happen in the mainstream a lot. It's happened, in a lot of different instances.
I've got a comic book around here somewhere that's perfect example of that. It's a Vampirella book.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. So, I really want to avoid that. And then issue 3, 8, and 11 on next year's releases, that it focuses more on kids in a flashback scenario from the 80s. And then we also see them now in present day. And so because there's so many kids drawn in those flashback issues, I need to find an artist that's good drawing kids, because some artists can draw really great adults, but when it comes to drawing children, they're frightening. They look like tiny, freaky adults. They have too many lines on their face. Their proportions are strange. And even though like one of my favorite artists of all time, John Byrne, I love his art. Yeah. But when he draws children, sometimes they're frightening. Because they look like tiny adults. So, I got to make sure that, and Alex Jovich does a tremendous job being very expressive and understanding how to draw kids so they look like kids. And he's good at drawing adults too. But it was really important that, you nail the fact that when you draw kids, you really got to get their proportions right. Certain features are bigger, certain features are smaller, so it's that kind of a play on that, as opposed to just, take an adult and shrink them down, because then it's going to look very strange. So it's stuff like that you got to really take into consideration, and I've had to do that. And it's been fun. It's been fun trying to find the right artists for the right books, and I'm kind of finding a couple people that I can really say, okay, this kind of like Kier here, who also is the artist on Blood Moon, which is the Blood Realm King Cryptid crossover that's funding right now. Kier's also on issue 9.
Awesome.
And
that King Cryptid Blood Moon, is that right?
Yep.
That looks badass. The artwork is amazing in that.
Oh yeah, and he gets better and better. So it's just that kind of thing that the more I work with certain artists, the more that I'll bring them back. Sometimes I won't bring them back for various reasons, whether it's I don't have the right story for them, or it just, it didn't really pan out in terms of how things worked with the story. But it was, everybody's great coming in on these things. So it's kind of like being a general manager of a sports team. You want to make sure that you're getting the right players for the right position, as opposed to just saying, well, an artist is an artist.
Yeah, and you've been doing this for a long time with alternate comics, so you should be like, you're like a pro at this by now.
Well, you'd hope so.
I mean, I
still make mistakes, though.
You're coming up on 20 years.
Out of Alterna, I've never seen anything that I was like, ugh, this is... I mean, there's comics that I'm like, yeah, this is not necessarily for me, but I'm not... But it looks awesome still. It looks...
like, good.
I love going to my comic book shop and going, oh, hey... But pulling up the Alterna, they have a little Alterna stand over there. It's Bankston's here in Waco.
That's the one.
And I like going over there and going like, oh yeah, I talked to that guy on this.
Yeah, the one I've enjoyed the most from Alterna Comics right now is T-Bird and Throttle.
That's a good title.
Yeah,
my daughter loves the Unit 44, and I love Blood Realm. Now, there's some others that you used to have under Alterna, and I'm a big fan of, but currently I'm loving King Cryptid and Blood Realm like that. Those two are badass.
Thank you. Yeah, I'm really enjoying the fact that we get to do this, and a lot of different factors have to work out to have a crossover work out, especially because this isn't just like a fun crossover story. This is something that's going to impact both titles. So the characters get affected, the worlds get affected. It isn't just something that like, okay, they meet, but then it doesn't really matter with the rest of the story for both Blood Realm and King Cryptid. These are both ongoing titles. So we wanted to make sure that something, the events that take place here matter. Because there's nothing worse, I think, than reading a crossover, and it either ends with it's all a dream, or you never really see things play out, and it feels like, well, did that really actually happen? And in Blood Moon, readers will right away see the aftermath of those effects play out, and this story takes place after King Cryptid #9 and after Blood Realm #18.
So this isn't going to be like something that happens in like a lot of anime where everybody suddenly has an amnesia after the big battle and everybody goes back to normal living.
No, yeah,
Okay.
Nothing like that.
Okay, cool. So how did this collaboration come about? Like, who approached who and what got the ball rolling for it?
Well, I pitched it to Rob. I really like Blood Realm. I like Rob a lot, and I think that the stories would make for an interesting crossover. And I think that because of the fact that he's going on issue 18 right now. Right now he's funding issues 15 to 18, and he's finishing up those issues. Because I can see that he's in it. He's making these. He's going to be making these for a long time. Mm-hmm. It made sense to kind of consider, of all the titles, that okay, well, let's try this out, because I think we could tell a really interesting story. He's got monsters and creatures in his, even though they're not on Earth, they're in a different planet, a different dimension outside of Earth. There's still a way to make that happen, So we have a dimension hopper, a dimension traveler by the name of Vargor, who is in the Blood Realm universe, the Blood Realm dimension, making his way to Earth. And King Cryptid fights him one night. He doesn't know who the hell this guy is. He's never seen anything like him before. And he knows he's powerful, and he can sense that he's full of hate. And so he's like, I can't let this guy go. So even though Vargor opens up this portal to escape, and he's also trying to lead King Cryptid back because he wants to try to use him to his own means back on Mordrin, which is where Blood Realm takes place. King Cryptid's not aware of that, but he knows that he can't let this guy go. So he doesn't know where he's going. He doesn't know what's going to happen, but he follows him through the portal. So he follows him through the portal, and he winds up on Mordrin. So that's how King Cryptid gets back to the land of Blood Realm, because he follows Vargor there. And Vargor is a really powerful, corrupted sorcerer. And he has been twisted and just completely just disfigured from the stuff he's been doing. He's been doing some really nasty stuff over the years. And he's bent on basically controlling all life throughout all dimensions. He's figured out a way to tap into other dimensions, to travel easily from place to place, and he kind of controls and brainwashes his followers into being a part of his massive cosmic cult, essentially. So Vargor is meaning to do a lot of nasty stuff, but he senses how powerful King Cryptid is, so he really wants to try to see if he can use him. And so we'll see how that plays out. It's a nice, fun story. There's a lot to it. It's a 71-page story, 80 pages in total for the graphic novel, but 71 pages of story. And I'm writing that with Rob Geronimo, who writes, and he's the creator, writer, artist of Blood Realm, and Kier's doing the art. And so it's been a really fun experience because, I get a chance to play with somebody else's toys for a little bit, and nice going back and forth, coming up with these stories, and hoping that if we do our job right, people will enjoy it a lot, and if they do, this can be the start of some really fun stuff, and we can have more of these kinds of things occur.
Where are we at on the funding right now? How much?
Right now we're getting close to the $9,000 mark. So it's at 80.
Okay,
if you scroll down a little bit, you'll see it. If you scroll down, you'll see we're at 8,904.
Okay.
So we're 96 away from 9,000, and it's a $14,000 goal, and we got 9 days left to get there.
Oh man!
So
we gotta get there.
Yeah. And we will get there. It's just a question of when at this
Right.
point, but the sooner the better, because we can get on to stretch goals and we can get more stuff in production and keep it on time. But no matter what, we're gonna be doing this, and we're gonna reach our goal. I got no doubt about that. It's just like I said, it's a question of when.
Right. This cover
that a
D, is this
glow-in-the-dark
the glow in the dark cover?
Yeah. So that's a full wraparound glow in the dark cover. And it's going to look like that, very close approximation to that. It's not going to have logos or anything like that. I want the art to be fully glow in the dark so that this way, if someone wants to view it and enjoy it that way, they can. At first, we were going to play around with seeing about making some parts of it glow in the dark, but then it's not really fun. You turn off the light, then you go, oh, well, that sword glows. That's about it. But like this, if you turn off the light, you charge it up, and then you can see the art, you can see the whole image. And I think that's far more impressive and just cooler in general. But that's one of the cover options if people want to get that. So we've got cover A as the standard cover. Cover B doesn't have the logos and stuff on it. It's just the art. Cover C is the sketch cover option, so you can get a blank variant and you can draw on that. It's really nice cardstock, uncoated. And we'll be drawing on those for some of the backers as well that got commissions for us to do. And then cover D is that glow-in-the-dark cover.
How many cover commissions deep are you guys right now? I would imagine quite a few.
Not too many, maybe about 10.
Oh, okay. I thought more people would do
between the Indiegogo and our own site.
Okay.
We've got a glow-in-the-dark sketch card option, too. So the sketch card itself will be glow-in-the-dark. So when we draw on it, it'll be black and white. When we draw on it, anything that's white will glow. So we have that also available on the campaign.
I think I got a King Cryptid sketch card from you from that last campaign. Where did I put it? Yeah, right here.
Let me see.
Oh, yeah. I remember that one. Oh, he disappeared.
How do I
Click on
how do
my
I
picture.
blow you up?
Can you just click straight on my picture?
Yeah, you should be able to click on maybe the left-hand corner of
There we
this
go.
box
There we
and
go.
hit full screen.
Okay.
Where's it at? Is he gonna zoom? Yeah, man. I was ready to go whenever I signed up for this thing. I was like, yeah, I want King Cryptid. I love it.
Thank you, man.
This thing's
Appreciate
awesome.
it. Yeah, so I'm looking forward to getting this story made, obviously, but I'm really looking forward to seeing how the readers, what they think of it, because there's so much stuff that happens in it that we can't talk about. It's chock full of spoilers. 90% of the book is like revelatory. So it's we could talk about the setup, we could talk about the characters involved and things like that, but there's so many plot points that if we were to talk about them, we would give way too many fun surprises away. So it's made it a bit challenging in terms of how much do we say, but
Sure.
we're hoping that the readers put some faith into us. And if they've been enjoying King Cryptid, if they've been enjoying Blood Realm, I hope they jump on this. And if they haven't been reading King Cryptid or Blood Realm at all, this is also a great place to start because you can get really quickly just you learn about the characters, you learn about who's who, and it's a story that can be enjoyed on its own. So you don't necessarily have to go in there reading every issue of King Cryptid or Blood Realm or even knowing what those things are. If this looks interesting to you, if you like action, adventure, monsters, sci-fi, fantasy, horror, it's got all of that. Take a chance on Blood Moon. It's a really, really great story with some great art, and I think you guys will really enjoy it.
This shot
That's
right
awesome.
here really makes me
Yeah,
want to
dude.
invest in King Cryptid, man. The art is just phenomenal. I love it. And just the gritty detail of it is insane.
Yeah, Kier is man, he's doing better and better every single page that he draws. I always tell him, I'm like, don't forget us. That's all. Don't forget us.
Absolutely.
The unicorn. Is that
Yes.
a cryptid or not?
I mean, I guess you could say it is. You know, there's some people that define cryptids and cryptozoology in a way more serious context, like what I was talking about before with like the
I don't
giant
think it's a
panda
cryptid.
and the mountain gorilla. You know, they really want to consider it to be like it could be an animal, it could be an actual thing.
Yeah, like a real thing.
Whereas
Unicorns aren't real.
Whereas,
We know
yeah,
they're
people
not.
would say a unicorn is not a real thing. But it's like maybe they were a real thing.
What about a
maybe they
werewolf?
don't exist now, you know?
Or Wolfman.
I think a
Wolfman's
werewolf.
like an Indian thing, right?
Well, a werewolf wouldn't necessarily be a cryptid if you know it's a werewolf. But when you see it as a wolf in its wolf humanoid form, you would probably assume it's some kind of a cryptid. I mean, all a cryptid is an undocumented, unclassified species.
Yeah.
You know,
well, that just opens up
not
the gate
human.
for-
Yeah.
Like that.
So
That wolf, the tiger. What was that thing called? The New Zealand tiger.
the Tasmanian wolf, the Tasmanian devil.
Tasmanian wolf. That was considered a cryptid for a minute, even though we had a photograph of it. Or it was a cryptid, or it's now a cryptid because I don't know if they're still around.
Yeah, well, it wasn't a cryptid. It was an extinct species, but there's been a lot of stuff over the years of people saying that they're not extinct and that they still exist in small numbers. So at this point, it's kind of becoming like a cryptid in terms of what exactly are people seeing, because no one knows conclusively if they're seeing that or not. Because obviously, if they know conclusively that they're seeing that animal, it would be taken off of the extinct species list at this point. But it's one of those things that, you know, to me, everything's a cryptid until proven otherwise. You know, so if you want to say unicorn, if you want to say mythological beasts, if you want to say anything like that, it's all a cryptid until it isn't a cryptid. You know,
well, I was just looking
once
at
we know what
cryptids.
it is and we've got it classified, it's not a cryptid anymore.
I see these lists of cryptids, and I'm like, that's not a cryptid. That's a mythological fantasy creature. There's a difference between dragons and unicorns and Bigfoot and Nessie. You know, Nessie could be a dinosaur, like the coelacanth, but
Yeah, but, you know, a dragon could be a dinosaur too. You never know. You never know.
If you look at like early mammals, a lot of those were really weird.
Oh yeah. There's a lot of there's a lot of freaky species that we already know about on this planet that just don't make sense, and they look like alien life forms or mythological beasts, and it gets even weirder than octopuses. You know, so it's like everything to me is like, yeah, it's a cryptid. I mean, the thing is, there's nothing that's getting hurt either by being like, well, it's an undocumented species. We don't have any proof that it exists yet. And you could say that for pretty much anything until we have proof, until we actually know about it. And there's been a lot of things over the years where, I mean, hell, dinosaurs were considered mythological beasts. Even for some people now, they're still considered mythological beasts.
Yeah.
You know, so it's one of those things where who the hell knows, man? That's where I'm at. I'm like, I don't know.
Have you ever seen anything like Bigfoot or?
I've never seen a living
Medusa?
dinosaur. I know that.
I mean,
But yet I've been told they exist.
like I've seen some weird stuff. And I don't know if it's cryptid or not. Like, okay, like orbs, light orbs.
Okay.
Some say that some of these orbs, the phenomenon or just natural phenomenon. Some people think they have like life or whatever. They're like actual entities. When that would make them a cryptid. And I've seen those, you know, those light orb things.
Well, I don't know if
like it had
it
life
wouldn't
to
make
it.
it. It has to be a corporeal thing. It has to have a body. So if you're talking about a light orb that you believe to contain some sort of life energy essence, you're probably talking something that's more closer approximation to like a soul or a spirit or something
maybe
like that.
maybe a spirit. Because there's those countries that
like ghosts wouldn't be cryptids.
Evil. Yeah, I agree with that. Ghosts aren't cryptids. But this isn't a ghost though. Like those light orbs, they had that, I don't know what documentary I was watching. They had the video with they're in the woods, and then that thing had like some sort of presence, like it was an intellectual whatever kind of spirit spirit would probably be a more apt explanation.
Yeah, well,
for it.
there's ball lightning. That's an
And then
actual
there's
thing.
ball lightning, like
Um,
phenomenon like that.
And
What
then
I saw
there's
wasn't ball lightning.
orbs. Yeah,
It was
then
like a
there's-
red orb.
Yeah, there's all kinds of cases reported with that sort of stuff. And some of it you could swear it moves intelligently, and it's at this point everyone's just kind of guessing what this stuff might be, and we don't have anything conclusive just yet. But what I hate is when people don't have anything conclusive, but then they come up with some kind of conclusive explanation, and it's like, well, you have to prove that then. The same way that the other person would have to prove that it's whatever they think it is in order to have it concretely defined as that's what that is. Like if you say it's spirit energy, okay, well you have to prove then in some way that yes, that's spirit energy, and it has to be able to be reproduced and say yes, that's that's the scientific theory, that's how all that works. But if you go, well, it's clearly not that, it's ball lightning. Okay, well then you have to prove that's ball lightning. You have to prove that it's some kind of a spark or some kind of a light trick or some kind of refraction with something, or swamp gas, the way they like to say with many things.
Project Blue Beam.
Are you thinking Project Blue Book with the swamp gas, or Project Blue Beam with the holographic?
Blue Beam's the one where they're
imagery?
like manipulating holograms and shit.
Yeah. So that one is,
that one.
And that's like, that's one of those things like with Project Blue Beam that I think is, there's been nothing conclusive to say what that is. That's kind of like it became like an urban legend, because it's there. Like we already have holographic displays that are just like what people would say, well, that's Project Blue Beam, and we already have that. So
It's a precursor.
yeah, so Project
Wayne
Blue
thing.
Beam is more about the utilization of those things to make like a giant, horrible false flag, so that it is the impetus for war. And let's just hope that we don't ever have that on full scale.
I already know it's going to be Project Blue Beam, so unless they make my brain think otherwise, which I guess is part of Project Blue Beam.
Well, that's part
Then
of it, it's just the
I'll know better.
psyop even of making you question that. So even we have right now, we have such advanced video and photography trickery where someone could actually have a legitimate video of an alien interaction, and I don't think anyone on Earth would believe it at this point. You'd really question that. You'd go, that
That's
it's
true with
AI,
AI.
it's some kind of, special effects, whatever. And even looking at like the Patterson-Gimlin film with the Bigfoot, and it's still difficult, even though it looks pretty convincing, it's still difficult for me personally and for a lot of other people to say conclusively, without a doubt, yes, that is a Sasquatch. Because there's too many factors involved where you're just like, well, how could it be one?
Plus, there's all these websites that
can you
encourage
really
people
trust
to make
that?
up cryptids. To make up these scary tales and have proof, like fake proof.
Yeah.
And it's all so that they can make these internets like Slender Man or whatever that. What is the one? Is it Slender Man?
Slender Man.
That was like a fake one that was made up for some website.
Oh yeah.
Based
Well,
on some real ones.
the other thing too is you could say that everything ever has been a made-up fake story. You know what I mean?
guess that's true.
So you can say that everything is the result of being manifested from human thought. So if we go down that road and we say that that's what that is, because every single thing that you do in life, every single thing you want to do in life, and every single thing that has been done because someone had the thought. So if you didn't have the thought, and you didn't act upon the thought, and you didn't express the thought, it never existed. So every single thing that's out there, ever, is the result of a person having that thought. Whether that thought manifested the reality, or the reality came first and the person thought about it later, and then it turned into this kind of mass consciousness thing, it's difficult to say. And the thing is that, how we experience reality is all about our perception based on how we experience everything and what our lives have led us to believe certain things are. So once you start going down all those different avenues, it becomes really easy to kind of start having people play up those perceptions and easily dismiss what it is you might have seen, or augment what it is you might have seen, and really make you believe that the shadow you saw was a scary monster, or make you believe that the scary monster you saw was just a shadow. So it really depends what it is and what is being played up. And I'm really fascinated by the fact that there's a lot of time and money and energy that has been spent throughout the ages on doing both of those things, both disproving what you believe and proving what you believe to be something that they would rather have you believe.
Just to keep us all confused.
Yeah, exactly. You know, and to kind of keep you forever guessing and in a state of uncertainty. You know, and we've been using those things like stories for forever. You know, even you can say that, okay, a lot of these kind of scary stories were conjured up to warn children to not be so stupid in the middle of the night, or not go down that part of the road or whatever, because you're going to get eaten by that monster. You know, but meanwhile, there's no monster down there that's going to eat you. It's just like bad things can happen when you can't see where you're going in the middle of the woods in the middle of the night. You know, or
Like
bad
that.
people can be out there, and instead of saying, well, bad people exist, which is like, yeah, okay, you come up with with something that's even bigger, badder, and scarier than just a bad person.
Yeah, like we paint the world full of shadows and teach our children to be afraid of the night.
Yeah. But then the interesting part is with that is it turns into, do we manifest these things? Do these things now come out because we've created them through our consciousness? And that's the part that's interesting, is because science has been proving that we consciously create different things occurring by just observing them. So like on a quantum level, particles change from being observed as opposed to particles that are not observed.
Oh yeah, and that could explain how you have like this collective. Oh, you say you have got a collective consciousness, kind of manifesting. I saw a report before 9/11. Hey, it's coincidence because it's 9/11. It's perfect time to mention this. There was like some kind of consensus they were doing about like unrest, people uneasiness, their tensions were building up until 9/11. It was like they were recording it, and then 9/11 happened, and you could argue that 9/11 was an event that happened, or that we manifested it because whatever was causing humanity to grow more uneasy with itself. Or I guess there could be something easily explainable. But
Or was it
governments and
precognition?
war.
Were we massively all having a precognitive state? Because there's been also science proven that your various levels, so you have all kinds of different energies throughout your body. You have all kinds of different things, you know, your heart rate, all this kind of stuff. It's been proven that, let's say, if I'm going to show you something violent, graphic, sexual, something like that, that's really going to stimulate some kind of emotional response, before I am to do that, you don't even know about it. You are already experiencing an increased heart rate and various other signals that increase your stress. But you don't know that I'm going to show you that. You don't know that you're going to be exposed to that. But on a subconscious, weird kind of metaphysical level, you're aware of it, and your body is already preparing you to see that stuff. So it's kind of interesting. Like, we all have like a certain level of ESP as far as that goes. And it's the same thing that, you know, when you see we've all felt this type of stuff. You know, you see an alley, you see a building, you see a person, you see something, and you have a weird feeling. I don't think this is a good place right now. I don't feel right here. You have like that kind of like queasy sort of, I don't know. You're already getting ready for this fight or flight response, but you have no reason to. There's nothing that's actually been done to you, but you're already starting to tense up. And people, not everybody, but most people experience stuff like that.
Oh yeah, like
And
when you say
why
you're
would
driving
we?
and all of a sudden you look over and there's a car almost about to hit you. If you hadn't looked over for no reason at all, you would have hit him.
Yeah, why at that moment did you look over? Did you sense imminent danger?
Mm-hmm.
We all
That's
kind of
happened
have
to me
like
a
a
lot.
little teeny tiny spidey sense.
Yeah.
Just the anticipation somehow manifests the action to take place. That's crazy. It's
Yeah.
a crazy idea to
Yep.
take. I never
And
thought
I
of
think
it.
people
that
who are
way.
more aware of it or like tuned in, I think they have it better.
Yeah, exactly.
think
And
I
I mean,
feel
that's
that.
your instincts. That's your instinct. That's your intuition. Doc Mass just said, listen to your intuition. And that's something that on a daily basis we are constantly being told to ignore. That we from authoritative figures, we are constantly being told, don't listen to that. And that's your heart.
Yeah.
That's your heart. Those signals aren't coming from your brain. Those signals have been proven to come from your heart. Your heart emits a much stronger electromagnetic field than your brain because of the concentration of blood that pumps through your heart. So you have all these different minerals and elements within your blood that pick up and sense these things.
Yeah, and they try to
So-
block it out with fluoride in our water.
So, well, what
So I don't
happens
drink
is that
water.
you turn people's brains against their heart. So you turn our
Yeah.
logic on to such a degree that we ignore our instinct. And meanwhile, we have ourselves betray us. You don't need outside influence to betray you. You have yourself do that. And we get that through people constantly in positions of knowledge, so-called experts, these kind of anonymous experts saying this, that, and the other thing, and to ignore that because that, you're smarter than that. You're a civilized creature. But the thing is that there's a reason you feel an instinct and a response and a sense like that. You shouldn't ignore that. And we're constantly told to ignore things like that. We're told that it's this, that, the other thing, and that's a bad thing. When meanwhile, that kind of stuff, listening to those instincts, is the only reason that your lineage and you are alive to this day. And they want us to ignore that. That's
For
strange.
the entirety of humanity, that's what we've been listening to the whole time and been in tune with up until past couple hundred years, let's say, with the advent of taking more and more advanced technology and more people
we
saying
surrender.
none of this stuff exists.
Exactly. And
With
we surrender a
science.
lot of our instinct. We surrender that to technology. We're
And
surrendering
look what happens
that
to people. They're getting dumber every single day.
because we become more reliant and dependent upon these things to do our thinking and our feeling for us instead of learning how to tap into that on our own and trusting ourselves, having just the confidence to trust in yourself and go, this situation doesn't seem right for me. How many kids, they want to be whatever they want to be. They already know they want to do it when they grow up.
TikTokers.
I'm not going to go down that path, but I'm going to say, when you guys were kids, did you have any
Astronaut.
idea what you wanted to be when you grew up?
When I was a little kid, I wanted to be an astronaut or Wolverine, one or the other.
Exactly, right? So while you can't be like a fictional character, you can't be Wolverine, there are certain things about Wolverine that spoke to you. There are certain things about being an astronaut that spoke to you. The kids that want to play baseball, kids that want to be a firefighter, kids that want to do all these different jobs, and they're told, nope, you got to go down this path that we all go down. Every single person goes down, and you ignore the individual until it becomes time for you to do this when you're an adult and you're old enough to make that choice of what you would like to do with your life. Instead of getting encouraged to kind of go, okay, well, let's see what this kid wants to do. You want to be an astronaut? All right, well, these are the various things an astronaut's going to have to do. These are the kinds of things you're going to have to learn. This is the kind of physical conditioning you're going to have to be in, all these different things. This is what you're going to need to do. And let that kid see, do they want to do that with their life? Give them the choice to go, okay, well, this is now the knowledge I have before me. Can I do that? We see kids in sports do that all the time. I mean, I follow hockey. I played hockey my whole life. But there's kids that learn how to skate when they're like 2 years old. If you want to decide you want to learn how to skate when you're 18, you're not going to be a professional hockey player. You got to start as soon as you possibly even have the interest and the thought to want to, and you got to have someone to encourage you to do that and go down that path in life. Because you already have it against you. The odds are already going to be against you to achieve that level of whatever it is you want to get to. But, oh my Lord, are they stacked against you the later that
That's
you
like-
decide you want to start. And it's like
It's
that
like
with
that
everything.
John Lennon song, the working class hero. It's from the minute you're born, they make you feel small. All that. I'm not a huge fan of some of his music, but that song was actually pretty good.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, there's truth to that, you know, and it's all about the fact that there's a system at play, and it's about the uniformity of it all, and it's not necessarily about the encouraging the individual to pursue whatever inner greatness that they can. Because think about how much, like, if your life was more tailored to all of the things that you felt passionate about, think about the kinds of things you could accomplish. Think about where you would be in your life. And most people don't get that ability to decide, I'm going to start focusing like that until maybe they're in their 30s, their 40s, their 50s. Most people.
I don't know. I think if I had if I hadn't have been forced to do all these things that I wasn't, it's not necessarily the things I wanted to do. I wouldn't be as good at what I do. You know what I mean? Like being forced to do other things and kind of like broaden my horizons, kind of help bring all those experiences back into, my art. And I'm learning how to tell better stories, but the ideas, you know what I mean?
Well, okay, let's say storytelling and art. If you decided today, as like, let's say you're 40 years old, you want to start to draw. But then you're up against like a kid who's been drawing since they were 4, and now they're 40. And they've been drawing every day, all the time, learning more and more and more, drawing all the time, from 4 to 40. But now at 40, you want to start. Who do you think is going to have a better drawing right now? The 40-year-old who started today, or the 40-year-old who's been drawing for 36 years?
Yeah.
So it's the same kind of concept. And we see kind of like small examples of that encouragement in certain ways, because obviously, yes, you want to have well-rounded people, but it's baffling to me to see once again like the dismissiveness, the idea that comes about because I didn't accomplish that. What makes you think you can? But what do you if that is the methodology that we all think of, like everything is in reference to me? If it's that narcissistic
sure, but the other
viewpoint,
side of that coin is you can do anything, which is just as vague and pointless as why you can't do anything. Like they're both worthless sentiments.
well, you can do anything that you dedicate enough time and energy to.
Yeah,
But
they
without
forget to
encouragement-
that sentence.
And yeah, exactly.
It's like you got to be encouraged, or kind of like not just encouraged, but I don't even know how to say it, because I heard that all my life. You could do anything if you put your mind to it, and I'm like, oh, I want to do this. Well, you can do it. Just put your mind to it, and it's like, well, where do I start? I'm a kid. I don't know where to go, where to learn how.
And that's what I'm talking about. That's what I'm talking about. Is that instead then of someone saying like the empty sentiment of you can do anything you put your mind to, which is true. That's not a lie. That's the truth. If it was a lie, no one would do anything at all, or we would all do the same thing. But if you're someone that goes, okay, I really want to do this, how can I do that? And if someone then doesn't know how to do that, and they're the only ones giving you the advice on what to do, that's why I really hate when people that are in a position of they don't have any knowledge or experience in something, but they want to give advice on how to accomplish the fate.
Yeah.
the
Oh
feat.
my god,
That happens a lot. And
especially
and
on YouTube.
I will absolutely listen to someone who's like, I've done it. Listen to how I succeeded, how I failed, etc. Here's my knowledge and my experience. But then when there's someone that comes along and it's like, no, I've never done it. I've never done that. I've never tried it. But I think that maybe it would work out if you did it that way. It's like, well, why don't you try it? And then let me know.
Where's the trial by
how
error?
it went for you.
Yeah.
I'm not the guinea pig for your hypothesis.
How about before you change the system, you understand how it works, like why everybody does things the way they do it.
Yeah, and then
Usually a good
maybe
reason.
you can figure out, okay, here's a better way, based on I tried it this way, it didn't work, but I tried it this way and it really did. And maybe that just works for you. Maybe it doesn't really work for someone else. But you can at least then have an experiential kind of viewpoint. But that's the thing, is that so a lot of people are out there, they're giving certain advice scenarios to try to be encouraging, but if they're not really aware of how to help you further, the best thing they can do is then try to at least find or point you to someone or in a direction where you can find that. And that's even something.
And just say, you know what, just do this, and then be confident, and they'll believe it.
That doesn't help either.
I'm gonna do that on my channel.
You gotta. We need more sincere people. We need more people who are out there that are willing to help each other out. That's the only way we're going to get ahead, as an individual or as a people, is to actually have people that are like, competition is great. It makes you want to strive and become better, but cooperation is what helps you get there. Because if you have competition the whole time, okay. But you need cooperation. You need people to work as a team. And we need people to understand in the world. And that's why we see it all the time. It's such a combative kind of way of being. And that's what makes it seem like it's so purposeful. Because we see a lot of talk of like diversity and things like that. Diversity is a given. Diversity is great. Diversity is something you see every day. But the diversity that's being spewed about nowadays is not diversity, because true diversity is about understanding that everybody has strengths and weaknesses, and that's just the way it is. And you need that. So you need a team mentality. You can't have conformity amongst a team to succeed. If you think about, let's say, sports, if you think about every team sport, if every single player on the team was the exact same player, that would not be a successful team. They could even all be the greatest player who ever played the game, and they could still be the whole entire team made of that player. I guarantee a team that instead is comprised of individuals that are all different and excel at different aspects of the game will still beat the team that's the greatest players that played the game, all playing the same way. So something like, let's say, hockey. That's my sport. I love hockey. You can't have everybody being the goalie. You can't have everybody being the star player who doesn't want to play physical or doesn't pass well but shoots great. You got to have everybody who does what they do great. You got to play people in the position and play them to their strengths. And to understand that they have strengths is to understand that they are different. And that's when you succeed. But if we all say everybody should be the same, and if everybody's not the same, then they're failing or they're lesser than, that's a mistake. And that's something that we're seeing over and over again, and we're touting it as that's diversity or equity or however they want to explain it. And both concepts are stupid, because if you say equity is great and diversity is great, you just did two contradictory statements, because you can't have people, unless we're talking about death, you can't have people wind up in the same scenario in the same spot, because that's where we wind up when we're all equal, is when we're dead. So you got to say, someone can do this great, someone can do that great, and we should acknowledge that and appreciate and support that. But instead it turns into, what do you mean? So someone might look at, let's say, a company and say, why don't you have all these women working here instead? How come there aren't more women? Well, maybe women don't want to do that job. Maybe women are applying 5% to 95% in terms of men to women. And you go, okay, well, we have 95% of the people who work here are men and 5% are women, because that's kind of the ratio of who applies. For us to tilt that, we would have to then dismiss a lot of qualified men to hire a lot of unqualified women. Or we would have to do something worse. We would have to force women to work this job, which sounds like a nightmare. It sounds like a nightmare to go in there and tell someone, oh, what do you mean you don't want to do that job? We need more people that are like you superficially to work this job.
But what about, imagine if all the X-Men were the same person. Imagine
that
how
sounds like a book that gets
be.
Canceled right away.
No, imagine how cheap it would be to make that entire action figure line. You need one mold, and you can make the whole line if they were all just the same.
I don't think it succeeds
person.
enough to get an action figure line.
And you could paint each costume a different color.
Everyone's multiple, man.
Yeah,
Boots, all Wolverines.
Yeah.
Well, if anything, we see that a lot right now with comics. We see a lot of the endless, You know, it's a million Wolverines and million Spider-Mans and a million Batmen and everything else, you know, and it's boring as all hell. It's far more interesting when there's just one of that individual and there's no one else that's like them. Because that's life.
Yeah.
That's life. There's just one of you and there's no one else like you.
And there's only
I want to
one
see is the
King Cryptid.
wait, what happened to me? Oh,
I don't know what happened to you.
I saw my screen like spinning.
Yeah, a little
Is
frozen
Lechusa
for
going
a
to be in
second.
King Cryptid?
Is the what?
The Lechusa.
No.
No,
Well, with
Lechusa.
King Cryptid, I'm not necessarily diving into pre-existing cryptids. I think that's more of like a low hanging fruit.
Oh, I see. That's
You
kind
know.
of cool though. The fact
So-
you're making your own up.
So like, there's a lot of cryptids that are inspired by, and will reference even some pre-existing cryptids. Like Behemoth is derived from the DNA of the Mothman
I was
being
going to ask you
infused
about
and
that.
experimented
I was like,
on a human.
is he supposed to be? I was always curious.
Yeah, so we have stuff like that, but there isn't going to be just like a flat out Bigfoot issue or something like that. You know,
No chupacabra issue.
no chupacabra issue. No, nothing like that. But it will have stuff that we can either reference or it'll be in a close approximation to something like that, or a hybridization. Because that's a big thing in the King Cryptid series, is that there's stuff that a lot of experimentation is going on. So cryptids, as we know them, are not really cryptids, and they have all kinds of like vials, a Noah's Ark worth of DNA of these various creatures, and there's experimentation being done on people and on animals. So we don't really see like a Mothman per se, but we see something that has been experimented on with Mothman's DNA. Or the White Mountain Yeti is, well, I don't want to give anything away in that issue, but it's not just a straight up Yeti.
Right.
So there's a lot of experimentation that goes on. There's a lot of like genetic mutations and hybridization that goes on in King Cryptid.
Interesting.
Curses and things like that too that happen. Like King Cryptid, he's cursed. He got turned into this thing. He wasn't born looking this way.
Oh,
And I can't wait.
yeah.
And I think it keeps it more interesting too, because otherwise it turns into just, you know, a checklist of Cryptid of the Week kind of a thing.
Right.
You know? Which, when they get into the Dover Demon issue kind of a thing, you know.
Shoot. Guys, we are at an hour and 12 minutes. Peter Simeti, thank you so much for coming on this show and joining us and telling us about King Cryptid and talking to us a little bit about cryptids that inspired you to make such stories, man. This looks like a phenomenal book. And, of course, King Cryptid and the crossover with Blood Moon, that looks badass. I can't wait to get my paws on it. I actually backed the catch-up tier for King Cryptid so I can get all of it together. I'm looking really forward to it, man.
Thank you.
Where else can we find you outside the Twitter realm?
I'm on Instagram. I restarted my Instagram account because it was being funky.
Okay.
So I'm at Pete Simeti on Instagram. And other than that, it's just Twitter, Peter Simeti. And I'm not on Facebook. And on YouTube, of course, you can follow me there. Subscribe on youtube.com/comicbookradio. And I'm also on Rumble. Same thing, rumble.com/comicbookradio. I'm building that up.
Phenomenal. All right. Well, once again, thank you, Peter Orchard and guests, for joining me here tonight.
Thank you.
This is
Sorry about
awesome. This is one to go in the books. I'm very happy that you were able to join us, Peter. I hope that we can host you again down the line when you come out with your next book.
I appreciate it. Thanks for
Yeah.
having me.
All right. Check you later, everybody.
See ya.